24 years, nearly a quarter of a century, and all that was left was a cold, soulless email, as if I were just another number in a spreadsheet. I am John Sweetman, 54 years old, born and raised in Indiana, where people still shake hands and mean it, where loyalty is not just a word but a way of life. I've always believed in doing things the right way, showing up early, staying late, keeping your word. That's how I was raised. That's how I lived. I started at Blake Matthews Engineering when we were just 9 people sharing desks in a crumbling building with leaky ceilings and a copy machine that jammed every third page. We were nobodies back then. But we had grit. I saw this company rise from a basement operation to one of the largest infrastructure firms in Indiana. And I wasn't just along for the ride. I helped build it. Weekends? Gone. Family vacations? Missed. I skipped my brother's funeral because we were in the middle of a major proposal that had to go out. I was in a server room rebooting systems while my first granddaughter was coming into the world. I told myself it was worth it, that one day the company would honor that sacrifice. I never thought that honor would come in the form of a generic subject line, contract termination notice. It was a Monday morning. I still remember the way the sunlight filtered through the blinds of my home office, casting long, golden lines across my keyboard. My coffee sat untouched beside me, steam curling into the air. I was expecting a meeting invite, maybe follow-up notes from last Friday's quarterly report. Instead, there it was, a message from HR. I clicked it, half curious, half distracted. I read it once. Then again. My heart dropped. Your employment has been terminated, effective immediately. The company thanks you for your service. That was it. No phone call, no exit interview, not even a farewell Zoom. Just a sterile, bloodless note. No warmth, no remorse. Like they were brushing crumbs off a table. I stared at the screen, stunned, frozen. The silence in the room grew heavier by the second, pressing down on my chest. I couldn't breathe. My inbox continued to ding with new messages, meeting invites I was no longer expected to attend. I picked up the phone and called Alan Matthews, one of the founding partners, a man I had once considered a mentor, even a friend. The line rang once, twice, then went to voicemail. I left a message. Alan, it's John. I just received something. I don't know if it's a mistake or... Look, call me back. He never did. An hour later, I got a call, but not from Alan. It was from Doug, a young analyst I'd mentored when he was fresh out of college. John, I just saw the HR bulletin. Jesus, man. Are you okay? I paused, unsure of what to even say. They didn't even speak to me. I finally muttered. Just erased me. Doug hesitated. There's something else, he said, voice low. They hired someone new last week. Name's Carter Matthews. Just graduated, he's Alan's nephew. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Alan's nephew, I repeated, voice hollow. Yeah, they say he's the future of the company. I laughed. A bitter, quiet laugh that didn't sound like me. Later that day, I drove to the office, not to cause a scene, I'm not that kind of man. But I needed closure, maybe even answers. The receptionist, who usually greeted me with a smile, went pale when I walked in. Mr. Sweetman, I was told you'd be gone. I finished for her. She looked away. I have a box for you, from IT, your personal belongings. A cardboard box. No security escort, no final handshake. Just a silent walk to my car with the sum of 24 years in my hands. A photo of the team at our first company picnic. A plaque for Employee of the Year from 2011. A coffee mug that said, "Steady as she goes." I sat in my truck, staring at the building I had helped build. Literally. My fingerprints were in its foundation, in its walls, in its wiring. And now, I was being shut out of it like some contractor who never finished the job. Then something strange happened. As I flipped through the documents accidentally packed into my box, a single folder caught my attention. It had my name scribbled on it in pen. Inside was a printout of an email thread. It wasn't meant for me. It was internal. Between Alan and one of the accountants. The subject line? Sweetman file, keep off books. I felt a chill go down my spine. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't just about a kid with a fancy degree and family ties. Something was off. Something deeper. They didn't just want to replace me. They wanted me gone. Quietly. Before I could see something. But I had already seen it, and I wasn't going away. He walked in with his hair still wet from the gel, an arrogant smile on his face, and a folder in his hand like he already knew everything. 2 days had passed since the email. 48 hours that felt like I'd aged 20 years. I hadn't slept much. My wife, Linda, kept asking if I was okay. I said I was fine. I wasn't. The truth is, I didn't know what I was. Angry, betrayed, hollow, all of it. I decided to go in on Wednesday morning, early, before most of the team arrived. I thought maybe I'd slip in, grab my things quietly, avoid the awkward stares, the forced sympathy. I had packed a small duffel and told myself I'd be in and out in 10 minutes. As I stepped through the glass doors of the Blake Matthews building, a building I had overseen the expansion of just 5 years ago, I was met with the familiar scent of polished marble and printer toner. Only this time, it didn't feel like home. It felt like walking into someone else's house, one where I was no longer welcome. The receptionist, Julie, gave me a tight-lipped nod, clearly instructed not to engage. I offered a weak smile, one I didn't mean, and took the elevator up to the 3rd floor. The moment those doors slid open, I saw him. He was sitting in my old chair. My chair. The same one I'd adjusted 100 times to accommodate my bad back. The same one where I had spent countless nights fine-tuning project specs, budgets, proposals. And there he was, legs crossed, leaning back like he owned the place. His name was Tyler Matthews. He couldn't have been more than 23. Slim-fit lavender dress shirt, the kind of shirt chosen not for comfort but for show. Hair slicked back like he had stepped out of a marketing brochure. There was a certain casual arrogance about him, the kind that's bred, not earned. He looked up as I entered. His smile widened. Not the nervous, deferential kind, no. This was something else. Confidence? No. It was entitlement. "Oh, hey," he said, flipping open the folder like he was waiting for me. "You must be John." I blinked. My throat tightened. "I am John," I said flatly. He chuckled. Actually chuckled. "Right, yeah. Sorry. Poor choice of words." He stood up as if rehearsing some corporate version of respect. "Didn't expect you this early. HR said you'd swing by." I stepped into the office. My office. The nameplate had already been removed. "Didn't mean to intrude," I said, forcing myself to stay calm, though my hands trembled slightly. "Just here to clear out my things." He nodded, then gestured toward a small box on the windowsill. "They boxed it up yesterday," he said. "Hope nothing's missing." That tone, that smug, practiced tone. I could hear Alan in it. Tyler was mimicking him, or maybe it just ran in the blood. As I reached for the box, I noticed a printout sticking out from under Tyler's folder. A blueprint layout I'd drawn by hand last fall. My signature was on it. He noticed me looking. "Oh, this? I was just going over some of your old notes." "Impressive stuff. Honestly," he said, flipping through it casually. "I'm surprised they didn't automate most of this already." I turned to him slowly. "Automate?" He shrugged. "You know, AI modeling software. I mean, no offense, but some of these systems are a little old school." There it was. A punch disguised as a compliment. I took a deep breath, then another. "Walk away, John. Just walk away." But then he added, "Still, it's cool to see how things used to be done." That word, used, landed like a slap. Used as in obsolete. Used as in discarded. I leaned closer. "Do you even know what that layout is for?" I asked. He glanced at it, then back at me. a hint of discomfort flickering across his smug expression. "It's for the Newfields extension, right?" "Wrong." "That," I said, my voice firming, "is the emergency bypass system for the Morgan County floodplain. If you mess that up, people don't just lose money, they lose homes." He said nothing. I watched the confidence drain just a little from his face. Good. Just then, the door behind me opened. Alan Matthews. He paused when he saw me. "John, didn't expect you this early," he said, adjusting his cuffs, always the politician. "Clearly," I replied. "Just here to collect what's left of me." Alan gave a quick glance to Tyler, then back to me. "You two met, I see." "Oh yes," I said, eyes locked on Alan. "We've had a lovely introduction." Alan offered one of his patented half-smiles. "We're grateful for everything you did here, John, really." "Gratitude," I said, "is usually shown while a man's still on payroll." That silenced him. As I picked up the box, something else fell out from the folder Tyler had been holding. A stapled document with the title Projected Financial Risk Scenarios, Internal Use Only. I caught a glimpse of numbers, big ones, misaligned, and a signature at the bottom, one I recognized. Brian Kelso, the company's head of finance. I bent to pick it up, but Tyler snatched it quickly. "Confidential," he said, eyes suddenly sharper. Alan stepped in, resting a hand on the folder. "It's okay, Tyler. It's just an old projection." But I had seen enough. I knew Brian. He never made projections like that without backup data, and I knew where that data would be. Something wasn't right. "You know what, Alan?" I said, heading to the door. "Thanks for the box." He nodded, clearly relieved to see me go. But as I stepped out, I didn't head straight for the exit. I took a detour down to the server room. I still had my access card. For now. It wasn't just about losing the job. It was about everything I had given, every piece of myself, and how they spat on all of it. For weeks, sleep became a stranger I could no longer find in the night. The silence of the house felt heavier than ever. My wife Linda tried to be strong for me, but I caught the way her eyes lingered on me at dinner. Worried, searching. My adult kids checked in from time to time, but there was only so much I could say. How do you tell your son you feel like half a man? That after decades of working your bones into dust, you were tossed out like yesterday's newspaper? They say men of my generation don't cry. We build. We endure. We carry weight in silence. But I did cry. In the car, parked alone outside the grocery store, the radio playing some sad country ballad. In the shower, where the water could hide the shame. I cried for the years lost, for the birthdays missed, for the parts of me I gave that would never come back. I cried for the man I used to be and for the ghost I saw in the mirror now. Every rejection email from new job applications felt like another nail in the coffin of my self-worth. "We appreciate your experience but have moved forward with other candidates." They wanted fresh blood, shiny degrees, social media profiles filled with buzzwords. What they didn't want was a 54-year-old who knew how to hold a company together with duct tape and instinct. One Tuesday afternoon, I found myself in the garage going through boxes I hadn't touched in years. Old folders, notebooks, even hard copies of project files no one thought mattered anymore. And that's when I saw it. A thin blue folder marked Q4, Review Drafts Internal Only. At first, I almost tossed it. But something about the label, handwritten, not typed, made me open it. Inside were printed spreadsheets, contract copies, and notes with my name scribbled in margins I never wrote. I flipped through, and a strange chill ran up my spine. Some numbers didn't match. One project, the Broadwell Bridge renovation, showed an approved budget of $2.1 million, but I distinctly remembered finalizing that job under $1.6 million. I had led that bid myself. I kept digging. Another file, a payment confirmation for the same consulting firm, Hollister & Lee, listed twice, just weeks apart, for nearly identical services. Same invoice number, same amount. Same signature from me, except it wasn't my signature. I stared at it, jaw tight, stomach turning. It was close. Whoever did it studied my handwriting, but the J curved too fast, and the S was too wide. I'd never sign like that, and I certainly never approved two separate payments for the same job. Suddenly, all the weight of my grief lifted, replaced by something else, something sharper. Rage. And not the kind that boils over. This was cold, focused, the kind of anger that knows exactly where to look. I ran to my office upstairs, grabbed the external drive I used to back up everything before the IT team revoked my credentials. I plugged it in, heart pounding, fingers stiff, and I went to work. I cross-referenced the documents in the folder with digital files I'd saved from the past 3 years. Project logs, expense approvals, contractor records. One by one, the pieces began to slide into place. Dozens of duplicate invoices, padding and logistics fees, consulting reports that never existed, and each time the same two names appeared at the bottom of the authorization chain: Brian Kelso, our head of finance, and Alan Matthews. I leaned back in my chair, stunned. How long had this been going on? Were the other partners involved, or were they just blind? I pulled out my phone and dialed an old friend from inside the company, Roger Denton, head of maintenance, and one of the last old-timers like me. He picked up after the second ring. "John," he said, surprised. "You all right?" "I need to ask you something, Roger, off the record." "Sure, you know I got your back." "Have you ever heard of Hollister and Lee getting paid twice for anything?" Silence. "You found that too, huh?" he finally said, voice low. "You're not the only one who noticed, but nobody wants to touch it. Brian's protected, and Alan, well, you know how he is." My hands tightened around the phone. "You're telling me people knew and said nothing? What can we do? HR's under Alan, legal too. And now he's got his nephew sitting where you used to be." Roger hesitated, then said, "But if you've got proof, John, maybe you can do something." And just like that, the man they tried to erase came back to life, no longer broken, no longer grieving, but dangerous. Because now I had something more than pride or memory. I had evidence. And for the first time in weeks, I smiled. Maybe they thought that by letting me go, I'd just walk away quietly. But they forgot one crucial thing. I helped build that company. Half of it has my fingerprints in the foundation. I knew every corridor, every shortcut, every loose floor tile and backdoor trick we used when money was tight. I knew where the skeletons were buried, because I helped bury some of them, and now I was digging them back up. My investigation didn't start with some grand strategy. It started with resentment, with spite, with this gnawing voice inside me that wouldn't shut up. The voice that said, "They think you're weak. Prove them wrong." I pulled out every contact I had from my years on the inside. Vendors, former project managers, old engineers, and even a guy named Charlie Evers, who ran logistics for us a decade ago and now worked in procurement at the state level. He owed me a favor. I reminded him of that the moment he picked up the phone. "Charlie, John Sweetman here. Remember that time I saved your ass on the Bryant County bid? I need to call that in." He chuckled, but there was hesitation in his voice. "What kind of favor are we talking?" "Off the books, discreet. I need eyes on state contracts linked to Hollister and Lee, RD Developments, and one called Eastmark Strategies. Anything that touches mid-state civil engineering." "Mid-state? That's your old company." "It was. Now I'm after something a little bigger." The line went quiet for a second. Then Charlie said, "Give me a few days." While Charlie dug into the contracts, I reached out to Daniel Whitaker, a retired accountant from my church who used to audit construction firms before he got tired of the rat race. I trusted him. More than that, I knew he still had the skills. He came to my house on a Thursday afternoon with a worn leather briefcase, thick glasses, and a look of curiosity. "You sure you want to poke this bear, John?" he asked, sipping the coffee my wife had just handed him. "I'm not poking. I'm ripping the damn cage open." I handed him copies of the documents I'd found, both digital and printed. He spread them across my dining room table like a battlefield map. These signatures, they're bad forgeries. Whoever did this didn't expect them to be questioned. And here, and see this payment trail? The consulting firm's invoice is dated after the service supposedly occurred. Classic laundering tactic. We stayed up half the night connecting dots. Every time we found a new lead, I felt my anger deepen. Not the hot kind, but the cold, focused kind that gives you purpose. Turns out, Alan Matthews had built an entire web of shell companies, each one tied to someone barely traceable. Janitors, distant cousins, even a former intern. Through these entities, he funneled money out of Midstate under the guise of consulting, minor renovation projects, and vague strategic planning services. One company billed $72,000 for site weather mitigation. When I looked up the location, it hadn't rained there in 5 months. And it wasn't just Alan. He was smart enough to hide the trail, but I was smarter. I tracked IP logs from shared documents back when I still had access, and I realized something chilling. Someone else had been signing off on the final approvals, Richard Blake, the quiet partner, the one who gave speeches about honor in construction and told every new hire how he started out with a hammer and a dream. I wanted to believe Richard was clean. He was the one who'd always said things like, "Sweet man, this company stands because of men like you." He even hugged me at my 20th anniversary. But now, the document said otherwise. Except, there was one oddity. Most of the falsified contracts had Blake's digital signature, not his handwritten one, and the metadata showed those documents were uploaded from Alan's laptop, which meant one of two things. Either Richard was in on it, or Alan was forging Blake's signature too. So I had to find out. I didn't want to go to Blake's office. Too risky, too obvious. So I waited. 3 days later, I saw my chance. A charity dinner. Annual fundraiser for Habitat for Humanity, the same one I used to attend every year. Wearing the same black suit and shaking hands with men who wore fake smiles and drank bourbon like water. I went alone. I waited near the back of the ballroom, past the cocktail tables and beneath the golden chandelier that looked like it had never been dusted. And then I saw him, Richard Blake, in his usual tailored navy suit, laughing with a group of developers. I waited until he stepped away to refill his drink. "Richard," I said, voice calm. "Got a minute?" He turned, surprised. "John, Jesus, I didn't expect to see you here." He looked genuinely glad. "How are you holding up?" I didn't smile. "That depends. Are you involved in laundering millions through fake companies, or just looking the other way?" His face went pale. "What the hell are you talking about? You've been signing off on projects that don't exist. I have the documents, the numbers, the proof." He looked around, lowered his voice. "Come with me." We slipped into a back hallway behind the banquet room, away from prying eyes. There, Richard leaned against the wall, his hands trembling. "Alan's been doing this behind my back. I found out 6 months ago, but I couldn't prove it. Every time I tried to access the books, he'd shut me out. Said I was getting paranoid. Then why didn't you say anything? Because if I blew the whistle without proof, I'd go down too. And I didn't have you digging." My heart thudded in my chest. "So you'll help me?" He nodded. "If you bring this forward, I'll back you. I'll testify. Alan won't see it coming." I left that night with something stronger than proof. I had an ally. And Alan Matthews had no idea the storm heading his way was built by the man he'd tried to erase. It was the first time in years I put on a suit and actually felt good about it. Not for a promotion, not for a funeral, but for justice. I stood in front of the Indianapolis FBI field office with my head held high, not out of arrogance, but out of resolve. And when those glass doors slid open, I walked in like a man with nothing left to lose. The lobby was quiet, clinical, and smelled faintly of lemon disinfectant. The receptionist behind the bulletproof glass looked up at me with the usual detached professionalism. "Can I help you, sir?" "Yes," I said, pulling the worn leather folder from under my arm. "My name is John Sweetman. I have evidence of federal-level corporate fraud, money laundering, and forgery involving Midstate Civil Engineering." I'd like to speak with someone from white-collar crimes. That got her attention. Within minutes, I was escorted to a plain interview room with a metal table, 2 chairs, and a recording device the size of a paperback. The man who walked in to question me looked fresh out of Quantico, but his eyes were sharp, too sharp to underestimate. He introduced himself as Agent Tom Carver. "Mr. Sweetman, we appreciate you coming in. This is your chance to tell us everything. Start from the top." And I did. For the next 5 hours, I laid out every detail, every forged document, every suspicious payment, every shady consulting company Alan Matthews created to funnel company money into his own pockets. I showed them the metadata from Richard Blake's digital signatures, proving the forgery. I handed over a USB drive loaded with scanned invoices, hidden emails, financial statements, and most importantly, audio recordings of 2 suppliers casually discussing inflated pricing to keep Alan happy. "You recorded these yourself?" Agent Carver asked, eyebrows raised. "Yes, after I was laid off. I had a feeling something didn't add up. I used to manage those accounts. I knew what normal looked like. This wasn't it." He leaned back in his chair, quiet for a beat. "Mr. Sweetman, this is big. You understand that, right? You've just dropped a bombshell." I nodded. My voice was hoarse, my back stiff from sitting so long. "I don't care if I ever set foot in that office again. But that man, Alan, he made me feel like a ghost. Like 24 years of sacrifice meant nothing. I'm not leaving this world with that being my legacy." He gave a slow, solemn nod. "We'll be in touch." And that was it. I walked out of the building into the late afternoon sun with my tie slightly loosened and a strange calm in my chest. For the first time in months, I slept through the night. What followed happened so fast it felt like watching a movie. One where you already know the ending, but you still hold your breath when it happens. Exactly 22 days later, the headlines broke. Mid-state executive Alan Matthews, arrested for multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. His mugshot was plastered all over the local news. The confident smile he always wore was gone, replaced by a pale, stunned face that looked like it had aged 10 years overnight. According to the reports, the FBI raided his home at dawn. Computers seized, phones confiscated, offshore accounts frozen. The fallout was immediate. Clients pulled out of contracts faster than I thought possible. By noon, 3 of Mid-State's biggest investors had terminated their partnerships. The company's stock, already fragile, dropped like a stone. News vans parked outside the headquarters. Employees were told to work from home until further notice. But the real shock came 2 days later when a second article dropped, one that cleared Richard Blake of any wrongdoing. The investigation confirmed his digital signature had been forged. In fact, Blake had attempted to access the financial records multiple times, but had been locked out by Alan. The FBI stated it clearly. Blake was a victim of deception, not a participant. That night, as I sat alone on my porch with a glass of bourbon and the newspaper folded neatly in my lap, my phone rang. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "John Sweetman?" came the voice. "Speaking." There was a pause. Then, "It's Richard Blake." His voice was quieter than I remembered, measured, but not rehearsed. "I heard what you did. I know it was you who brought Alan down." I didn't respond right away. I waited. "I want to talk," he continued. "Face to face, I have a proposal for you." My grip tightened around the phone. "Why now?" "Because everything's changed, and because this company, if it's going to survive, it needs someone who remembers what it was before all this corruption. Someone who built it from the ground up." I looked out at the Indiana sky, the stars just starting to peek through. "I'm listening." He looked me in the eye and said, "We did everything wrong with you, John. I did everything wrong, and now I want to make it right if you'll let me." We sat across from each other in the same boardroom where I'd once pitched multi-million-dollar projects, where I'd laughed with colleagues who'd since vanished into LinkedIn profiles and silent inboxes. But this time, the room felt different. Not because of the furniture or the lighting, but because of the man sitting across from me, Richard Blake. The same man who'd barely spoken to me on my last day at Midstate. The man I once believed was complicit in my downfall. His hair was grayer than I remembered, shoulders more hunched. His voice, once smooth and commanding, now carried a weariness, not just from the media storm or the legal chaos, but something deeper. Guilt. "I didn't see it, John," he said, his hands flat on the table, palms open, like a man laying down his weapons. "I let Alan handle the finances for too long. I was focused on expansion, public contracts, mergers. I didn't ask the right questions, I didn't look close enough, and when I should have stepped in, I stepped back." He paused, staring out the window as if the glass might offer absolution. "I should have known something was wrong when you were let go the way you were. That wasn't just cold, it was cowardly. And I let it happen. I let Alan convince me it was time to modernize, to bring in fresh blood." He shook his head. That was his cover, and I was too damn blind to see it. I didn't say anything. Not yet. "You were the conscience of this company, John," he continued, his voice softer now. "And when we cut you out, we cut out our soul." I leaned forward, my voice low but firm. "I gave everything to this place, Richard. Time I can't get back. I missed birthdays, anniversaries, and my granddaughter's birth, for this. And you let me walk out like I was a forgotten line item in a spreadsheet." His eyes met mine again. No defense, no excuses. "I know," he said simply. "That's why I'm here. Not with empty words, but with something real." He reached into a leather folder and slid a document across the table. I glanced down. My name. A new contract. "Director General," he said. "With full autonomy. No board interference. You run operations. You clean house. You decide who stays and who goes. I'll stay on as chair, but you'll have the final say. This company needs a new heart, John, and it needs to start beating again with someone who still remembers why we built it in the first place." I stared at the paper, then back at him. "Why me?" He smiled, just barely. "Because you're the only man I've ever known who would rather lose everything than lose his integrity." There was a long silence. My thoughts swirled like a winter storm. Doubt, pride, anger, even fear. But beneath it all, there was something else. A flicker I hadn't felt in months. Hope. I took the pen. "All right, Richard, I'll come back, but I won't be anyone's shield. The day's deception slid by unnoticed or over. We do this my way." "That's exactly what I want," he said, standing and extending his hand. "And what this company needs." When I walked out of that boardroom, the hallway felt familiar again, not like a place that had rejected me, but one that still remembered the footsteps that helped build it. Employees nodded as I passed. Some looked surprised, others smiled quietly. Word travels fast in buildings like that. I didn't need to say anything. That afternoon I stepped into my new office, not the one I used to have, a bigger one, the one that had belonged to Alan Matthews. I opened the top drawer and found a gold-plated nameplate still inside. Alan J. Matthews, President. I turned it over and tossed it into a box marked Archived. Then I slid in my own. Wooden, old, a little chipped on the corner. John Sweetman, Director General. It had been sitting in a garage for years gathering dust. But I'd kept it, just in case. That evening, I called my son, told him to bring the family over. I held my granddaughter in my arms for the first time in months and told her a bedtime story about a man who lost everything and found something even better. Now when I look back, I don't see the layoff as the end. I see it as a door being slammed shut, only so another could finally be opened. I proved to myself and to them that loyalty, character, and truth still matter. That being the last one standing sometimes means you're the only one who didn't lie down. And if you're ever tossed aside like you don't matter, I want you to remember this. Scrap metal is still metal, and metal will always be stronger than brand new plastic.